Like we are live.
Yay.
All right. Well, tonight I got my friend Doug here, and
And I got my
been
friend
trying.
Ron here, so it all works out.
Yeah, I've been trying to get him. I tried to get him on almost a month ago, and I had some personal issues that happened. So I'm glad I got him back on here.
Thanks for having me here. Yeah, I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Yeah. So I've been seeing on your Facebook, you've been posting a lot about your new piano cover, instrumental cover,
Oh, yeah.
Patience.
Yeah.
And I like reading the comments of how people, respond to your music. And um, I have to say, of all of my musician friends on there, you got the most positive uh, compliments. I mean, it's like these your friends and fans seem to really enjoy what you're doing, and they they show it back by giving you these amazing, wonderful comments that I'm sure help drive you, musically.
Uh was thinking about making a joke about how much money I pay them to do so, but no, it's great. I mean, of course, it's great. Every one comment at a time, right? One fan at a time. So uh it's the quality over the quantity has been my long-standing mantra.
Right. Yeah. So how did you pick that particular song? Because I know you did other ones because you had
Sure. Yeah,
other.
we can start there and go back. It's kind of probably a full circle conversation because in a lot of ways, this is the kind of thing I should have done in the very beginning.
Right.
I have these two, you know, juggernaut albums that took my entire life force to get into existence, and now I come out with a few covers. Well, you know, I mean, just like anyone does, when you're a pianist, when you're a piano player, I guess the equivalent of being in a cover band, is being a piano bar, you know,
Right.
private party piano entertainer guy.
Right.
Um, they both translate into the fact that, you're playing other people's music for a living. Um, and I did that for a while. 10, 12, 15 years ago, back in the mid 2000s kind of a range. So I was playing other people's music all the time for a living, taking the request, learning all kinds of songs I didn't want to learn. And I became the 4 nights a week guy at this restaurant, to kind of have like a quote unquote stable place, where just to have the place where people can come see you, and then you build from there, and then that's how you get the private parties and the more lucrative stuff from there. And it gets really, I guess, just like I've never been in a fully functioning working cover band, but I imagine there's differences, but I think there's a lot of parallels too, and that it's a job. It
Right.
gets monotonous. I mean, there's a lot of cool things about it, but you end up playing the same stuff over and over all the time, and usually it's not your own favorite stuff. But eventually, and this restaurant, it was kind of an older clientele, so I was doing a lot of old standards, and I like certain show tunes, but I was doing a lot of the old Rodgers and Hammerstein, a lot of those older show tunes, and just a lot of stuff that I just, you kind of had to eat humble pie and, get the repertoire going. And but then what would happen is, on the umpteenth night, just organically, I would end up sneaking in Silent Lucidity. I would end up sneaking in The Spirit Carries On. I would end up sneaking in Patience. I would end up sneaking in, stuff that just came out of my fingers without thinking, because it just eventually, you just got to cry mercy at some point and say, I got to just play something for myself.
Right.
And that stuff got the same tips because
Right.
I guess a lot of the clientele, even if they don't know the songs by name, they're just they're enjoying the vibe. And so I realized, oh, you can do like a 90-10 rule. You can play like the old stuff, and then you can sneak in, I mean, I was doing, Metallica on the piano, and, for
Right.
a senior citizen, quiet dinner clientele, but they didn't know that, and I would, some nice dear old lady would come up and throw the $20 in the jar, and, oh, that's so nice. What is that? You're so, I'm like, okay, well, it's Metallica, but and so, little by little, I would eventually start. I mean, it's like anything, your confidence grows, you start getting your shtick together, you start more fully realizing who you are and what you're capable of in that context. But I did do so much of it, and my, again, quote unquote, meaning of life kind of calling, feeling of vision, to try to, if that doesn't sound pretentious enough, right? But it was always to do my own music. And
Right.
I mean, I guess we'll get into that too, but to answer your first question, I take 20 minutes to answer one question. We're only gonna have time for like 3 questions, but I really eventually was able to pivot into a point where I was able to really hunker down and focus on my own music. So that kind of establishes the foundation to the answer, which is to say, I so embraced the opportunity finally to really put all the eggs in the basket of my own music, that, making an official, and I said this in the letter I sent out to my email list, because this song just went live like 2 days ago, my first official cover as Rausch, I really shied away from, so for some of those reasons, I really didn't want to come out with like an official cover song as the thing. It was really just, the pendulum swung so heavy in my mind, and like, this is like my music or bust. So fast forward 12, 15 years, I don't know, later, I guess a lot of this had to do with the COVID thing. I know we were saying we want to talk about the COVID thing too. Right on the brink of COVID shutdown, on the brink of shutdown, I had finally kind of told myself that as I'm working on, we've got these 2 albums out, I'm working on the batch for the next round for album 3, but I did want to I decided I did want to do a proper representation of a few choice covers that, I can play in my sleep. I can kind of say I do, at risk of sounding pompous again, but like, own them. They're not songs that I really had to work up, or put too much effort into. They're songs that were kind of part of my DNA from all the way back. And I can, and again, that's not to sound overly whatever, but I can just kind of, they just kind of run out of the fingers. And it's like, all right, I probably should have a few cover songs represented in the mix. And so how I chose them, it's a very controversial thing. And I know you have a very significant prog crowds, so I kind of
Right.
straddle a lot of different music genres. I try to evade the prog branding like the plague, but I know Steven Wilson used to do that, and then he kind of surrendered, and he can kind of chart
Right.
his own path and do what he wants to do, and it is what it is. I'm not quite there yet, so but actually it's funny how I got into prog, which can be its own thing, but I'm not from the generation that's supposed to like bands like Guns N' Roses. I came later. I'm from the
Right.
generation that's supposed to worship all the music that I can't stand, to be honest with you. So I cut my teeth learning, Guns N' Roses, Queen, Pink Floyd songs on the piano. And then that's ultimately what got me into classical. I mean, I'm an ass backwards kind of guy. I mean, I eventually ended
Right.
up with a classical piano degree, but it's playing Guns N' Roses on the piano that made me fall in love with the piano, to be honest. I mean,
Right.
that's the whole thing. And that User Illusion 2 album, although like, this was years later after it came out, I'm discovering things kind of later in the game. But there's a song on there called Estranged. It's a 10-minute epic. The song
Yes.
saved my life. It's one of my favorite songs of all time to this moment. I can hardly listen to the thing without just breaking down. It's just such a masterpiece of a song. I'm not afraid to say it. I know that's a
Right.
controversial thing to say when you try to
Well,
like say
actually, they when they put that out, I think they were basically um, just going for it, because they did their hard rock masterpiece, And then they was like going, well, I don't think they wanted to do a part two, you know,
Right.
and they recognize themselves as musicians and not a one trick pony, you know, doing the same albums over and over again. I was always talking about that to people. I'd say, you know, um, when bands have the same basically albums over and over again, you know, same music with different lyrics on it,
Yes.
it starts to become insulting for the audience and you as the musician, because now you're saying it's like, well, the audience are saying it's like, oh, why are they giving me that same song again and again with different lyrics? And then it goes back and it's like, well, you know, to the musician, it's like, that's all they want from us, you know, and I feel
And a
like,
lot of that has to do with record label pressure and stuff
oh
coming from
yeah,
the business side too.
oh
But
yeah,
that goes
but
both ways, by the way, because this is a great conversation to be having, because this is my whole raison d'etre, you know, is it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't in a lot of cases, because when bands do repeat themselves and do, you know, the formula, you know, that whether it's the required cash in that their employer, the label, is insisting upon, or the flip of that, which is the band takes a risk and does do a left turn and try to reinvent themselves and evolve. A lot of times, that also doesn't always, I mean, it's very subjective and opinionated, but I can point to a lot of examples where I really wanted to get behind the band just on principle because they're doing something different, but then that which was different ended up kind of going in a direction that I'm like, oh man, I wish they would have gone this direction. You know, like it doesn't automatically grant them, you know, being put on a pedestal of
yeah,
greatness
it's
just because. So it goes both ways. But no, I
oh
appreciate
yeah,
what you're saying in Guns's
yeah,
case. Yeah.
you know, because and I understand too. It's that they need to have something familiar. You know, the fan needs to have something familiar. I mean, I should say the typical fan. You know, the one that, especially for top 40 style music,
Right.
um, they need to have. It's like, okay, well, you know, I'll, you know, let's say like Madonna. I'll put
Mhm.
that name
Sure.
out. She needs to have a certain style, and it needs to stay within, you know, confines. I mean, she it has a little growth, but not enough that, you
Right.
know, she puts out like some grand opus of something, you know. But it's like
Right.
every time you hear her music, you know exactly who it is, and you know she's gonna. There's a formula that she
Right.
does, but where it becomes now we go the opposite direction to bands that came up in the 70s that weren't necessarily progressive, but they were, you know, what they I think they like to call art rock now.
Yeah.
Or pompous music like Queen and Sweet, you know, like that, where they were expanding on the formula,
Right.
where it was Queen especially. It's like they went from full on hard rock to, you know, a very mixed bag of
Mhm.
stuff.
Sure.
Um,
And I love it. I
so
love, except for Hot Space. That's the only
yeah,
exception. But except
I
for
know.
that, I don't think any of us can do Hot Space, right? But I mean, you got Under Pressure, but other than
Yeah,
Hot Space, I think, I mean, some of the latest Queen music is some of my favorite. And I don't know that that's the most popular opinion, but I was, you know, very, very much behind that. Innuendo album is one of my favorites,
oh yeah. That, well,
but
when they
yeah, so
put that one out, I was like going, this is like a return. It's like, you know, a return, but then
okay.
going forward at the same time.
Yes. Yes.
And that was one of the things that why I love that album, because it falls, I think it falls closer to where they should have gone in the 80s,
Hmm.
you know, staying with the hard rock element, but then, you know, having those, you know, more mellow songs. But you know, hey, you, you know, once things are put onto tape back then, you know, now on digital, but once they're put
Hmm.
onto tape, you can't do it. You can't do a do over. You know, it's like here it is. You know, hope you like it. You know, but you know the
Well, my
band
whole
stuff.
thing is the musical ambition of it all, right? So
Yeah,
I mean, like you were saying about what Guns did with, they made 10-minute epics on those Illusions albums. And that's what really grabbed me. I was never an Appetite guy. And I mean, strike me down as I say those words, but I mean, I'm a piano player. So it's those piano epics that really kind of started the ball rolling for me. And then I think I'm the only guy in the universe with this story. And yet it seems so logical to my crazy brain, but it's from those Guns N' Roses epics that I owe my interest in anything remotely, called prog, because what happened
Right.
for me was Estranged was like the last truly great musical masterpiece in the commercial realm before it all, went differently. And so then it was very logical for me. We had to go underground. We had to look a little harder. We had to start putting effort in to look for that, I know, subjectively speaking, quality music.
Right.
But you weren't going to get it anymore in the super mainstream for a very long time. There's a little bit, but still it's like pulling teeth.
You
But
have to hunt.
that's
You have to
that's
hunt.
what led me to Dream Theater. I mean, I literally went from Guns N' Roses to Dream Theater. That's my rite of passage. I mean, I was looking for more 10-minute epics, and then I stumbled into Dream Theater like all of us do by accident almost. I was at a music
Right.
camp, think like junior year of high school or something, and some random person, I mean, it was band camp and
Right.
some random person who was like super obsessed like crazy, as every Dream Theater fan is. I mean, they're either nuts or they hate them. There's like two types of people in the world. Well, they say two types of people. King's X, you either heard of King's X or you love King's X or you haven't heard of King's X. With Dream
Right.
Theater, it seems to be similarly polarizing. But there was this super crazy hardcore guy. I forget his name and I forget what instrument he played, but we were at band camp and he was just going nuts about this band Dream Theater. You have to check them out. Oh my God, they're the greatest thing ever. They're the best. And I'm like, all right, calm down. And then, I guess a good 4 or 5 years later, that guy became me. And I
Right.
was, I became, as we all do, we all start drinking the Kool-Aid. And so that's to kind of answer your very first question. That's how I, so I owe Guns N' Roses my life a little bit. I owe Dream Theater my life. And I decided I'm going to do a couple choice piano solo. I said in my letter to the fans, I said, because there's so much time, energy, money, effort, a lot of people that are not on the business side, like they have no clue, but it takes a lot to do a fully produced, professionally released final product of any
Right.
3-minute song, let alone, and this is maybe will or won't be the last time I reference GNR, but the way they epicified their covers, what they did with Knocking on Heaven's Door, what they did with Sympathy for the Devil, what they did with, Live and Let Die. It's not only did they make it their own, I mean, that's the cliche thing to say, but they hit it out of the park into the stratosphere, in my opinion. So I guess automatically my bar is always set very high for what I come out with, as a, maybe to a fault, I'll admit, but as an official kind of thing. So in that, I'm still opting to not go for the whole like fully epicified commercial full-on band presentation of a cover song formally. I decided that doing a couple choice piano solo covers that, again, that I knew like the back of my hand, and of course Estranged was going to be, it'll come out later this year officially. There's a video that went up last year, but it's going to be one of the properly mastered. Rich Mauser, who's the god of
Oh yeah.
prog engineering, even though he does all my mixes and everything, he agreed to help out just in terms of balancing out, sweetening, and mastering these piano covers. So for example, when Estranged comes out, go back to the YouTube video. If you listen very closely, you'll notice the audio is not exactly the same, because now we're taking it to that next level with the mastering and just making it, again, more professionally, commercially ready for official release. So I think there's going to be like 7 of them just released as, like, as they say in the business, waterfall strategy cascade of singles this year. And
Right.
the only other thing I'll say is Patience was by accident. It wasn't any kind of intention. It was a warm up for Estranged. I mean, Estranged is like my bread and butter. That's like, what's Doug's specialty on the piano? Estranged. So I really wanted to get a proper representation of that song as a piano version. And this whole thing came about because I was so committed to delivering Estranged as a final product. I was just warming up with Patience. It's the easiest song in the world to play. It's 3 chords, 4 chords, because you've got a secondary dominant going to the 5 chords sometimes. So anyways, 4 chords. But I did it. It came out very well. And then I thought, well, the Estranged video is up already. So Patience is a good, lyrically, thematically, it's got a very general mass kind of, it's not even my favorite song in the world, but it just made sense for the time we're in, back to the COVID thing. I mean, we're
Right.
theoretically, knock on wood, coming out of the COVID times, before too much longer, maybe. You never know.
Hopefully, yeah.
So it just seemed like the right song to lead off with. And then I think there's going to be a total of maybe 7 total, all for different reasons. But again, Estranged and Spirit Carries On, I would say those are the 2 anchors to this little year of cover releasing. I really wanted those 2 songs to have a real proper representation, and to the point where I can call them official Rausch releases in the mix with the band stuff. So that's why I'm doing that.
Yeah. Well, going back to covers now, earlier today, I was talking to my girlfriend about this. I have always, I'm not a musician, so I've always thought the way to do a cover, and it could be controversial, is from a musician standpoint, you go in and you see how the song was made, like the notes and everything, and take it apart, and then pretend like you're creating it, and that becomes yours. But at the same time, keep a little bit of the spirit of what the original is on there, that people can have, they can recognize it, in parts, but then they also see that, okay, honestly, if you want to listen to the original of a song, go listen to the original.
Go listen to the original. Exactly.
But if you want to see, a cover, or better yet, an interpretation of the song, that's what you are doing. That's what I've seen other artists do, that they put their own stamp on the song. And to me, that makes me think, okay, well, I know that song's Patience, but it's not the original. It's Doug's interpretation of it, because through the piano, because that's really the only way for growth. If you're going to be doing a cover song, is that you put your own stamp on it, and you see, maybe, okay, well, they were going from A to B, but then, I heard in this, in a section, maybe not Asian, but you hear in a section of the song where it's like, my goodness, they could have gone a little bit further, but they just, stop right at the edge, and they, it's like, let's see if I can take it a little bit further. Maybe that was what they were originally going to intend to do, and the label, said, no, we need it at 3 minutes 45 seconds.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank you. That was one of the main driving reasons that I wanted to. That's ultimately what led me to take the decision to do it as a solo piano endeavor. I mean, a couple reasons. I wanted to have some of the Rausch songs, which are part of me as an artist. Everything is who you are. It's an exact representation of you, or it better be, or get out of the way. But a lot of like those Rausch songs, like some of those don't have piano on them at all. And, I have a degree in piano. Some of them do, but if someone, just a random person, happens on Spotify, there's 18 official Rausch songs out there as of early 2021. I've got a, X amount chance that they might totally miss anything with piano on it if they only hear, a certain different song. So it's like, man, I better just like double down on the emphasis of the piano angle. But everything you just said would speak to why I confirmed that decision, because it's not so much in my case that I will speak to the one thing you said. It's not so much like, and I know this happens all the time, but not so much for me where like I broke it down and tore it apart and then like rebuilt it up. It you know, and it's why I approved it to be like an official kind of release, because it is like the other songs where it just is an extension of what comes out of me and like who I am.
Right.
So it wasn't, in other words, like an artist shouldn't force it. They shouldn't have to quote unquote try, right? So I guess if anyone asks like why I chose the songs that I chose, in some cases they're super meaningful to me, but they're just, in all cases, they're songs that I didn't have to work too hard to pull apart, think about, oh, how do I want to, they're just songs that they come out of me in a certain way that like, this is, it's my interpretation of the thing. It's like, I take it in with my ears and then I reconvert it out this way. It's just how, it's patience according to how my brain is, you know,
Right,
the
right,
same way
yeah.
original music is. So
But
anyway,
that's the way it should be. Honestly, that's the way it should be because again, like going back, it's like if we want the original, just go listen to the original and then call it good. But if you want to hear someone doing something different to it, you know, from a wide range of ways to do it. You can do it from anywhere. Just like if the song was all based on guitar, and you do it all on piano, and then vice versa if you had something like that. If it was a guitar, I mean a piano album, and then you just say, well, let's see, how would that sound if it was all, acoustic guitar? You just kind of mix it. I think I like it when it's mixed up, but I also, and then at the same time, I like to also be able to recognize the song, you know, and case in point is the um, what is it? The guys, Neil Morris and Mike Portnoy doing their cover albums. It's like, they put their stamp on it, but
right.
you hear the original because it's like it's just amazing that they do stuff like that. And I
There's a I'll just like one example. I don't know if you have the transatlantic whirlwind
yeah,
bonus disc.
I think I do. It's been a while. I know I got their new one, but
So there's a couple covers on the bonus disc, and one of them is Salty Dog, and Portnoy sings it. So it's Mike Portnoy covering Salty Dog, and actually he's the one that gave me that. I didn't even have it. It was some special box set edition that I didn't have. And then
right,
I told Marlene, his wife, I said, make sure you tell him this is like the greatest cover of anything I've ever heard. It was so well done. His voice, they really worked on his voice. Like they took it seriously. And I think it was a dedication in that case. If I'm not totally out of left field, I think it was a dedication to his father who he had lost. I mean, it was a really meaningful reason that he did it. And you could
right.
hear it in his voice, and it was well produced. Rich mixed it. It was so good. And it's the kind of thing you're like, man, why can't this be like #1 on the charts? Like, why can't this be huge? This is exactly what music should be if it's going to be a cover kind of thing. But, so many people, and there's so much that gets lost in the flood because there's so much clutter out there nowadays trying to break through, which that's an old cliche conversation by now, and
Oh yeah.
everyone's
Well,
covering stuff. So that was another hesitation for me too. It's like, another piano cover to throw out into the world. But, it's like, I'm also not going to let the market saturation be the standalone reason I'm not going to do it. So
right.
I'm doing it.
Well, going back to, I don't, I could be wrong, but I don't think we would have heard Mike sing had it not been for Transatlantic.
I agree. I agree.
I think they pulled him out of his comfort zone, because I'm sure up until before that point, I'm sure he probably was like the rest of us singing in the shower,
I
stuff
think
like that.
I think he did, like, he started, didn't it start in 2000 when he started doing some background vocals on the Metropolis 2 tour? Like he just started
Yeah.
adding some growls and some just basic stuff. And then, but yeah, Transatlantic, Missing My Max and Melody, which is his
Yeah.
kids. Yeah, that was like the beginning of hearing them on record. And yeah, the new
Oh, yeah.
Transatlantic, you had mentioned that. What do you think about that, by the way? We're tangenting off, but
I think that's epic. I mean, I like the single disc, and then I like the double disc. I couldn't say one is better than the other. I think the single disc is kind of like a, based on what I read, I listen to it, but it's kind of like an interpretation of double one. I could be really wrong because I hear similarities, but again, not.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
like,
Yeah, well, that's the idea. Yeah.
and I kind of think they should have put it all, both of those, the CD things together as a as
Yes,
a as a
yes,
trip as a triple
yes,
disc. I
yes.
understand that they're trying to make money. COVID times, you're trying to make some money. Because I
Mhm.
think there's even a Blu-ray
Yeah, there's
Blu-ray
like
audio of it.
it's like everything. Yeah, yeah.
And it's like I understand that is, but for us poor folks, you need, I eventually would get the Blu-ray. Hopefully if it's still in print by the time, got the
Yeah, all these
funds. But
limited editions. Yeah.
I know that's another thing that one of these days I want to do a show just on the limited editions, pros and cons.
Mm,
'Cause
mm.
I think there's more cons than pros.
The limited edition thing's main function is just to fight the losing battle of physical products, not being bought. So I
Yeah.
mean, that they're just trying to come up with every way possible to incentivize people to buy the physical thing, because
Oh
you
yeah.
get a third of a penny on Spotify
Yes. Yeah.
per
That's the one
listen.
thing. That's the one thing. I had a friend of mine, one of the first people that I interviewed, and I had just gotten Spotify like not even a month before, and for me. I used it like I use YouTube and the other stuff. Is if someone gives me a recommendation, I want
For
to go hear it
reference.
first.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
exactly, for reference, and
Me
then
too.
what I do is I go buy the thing. You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
and that's what I do. Um,
So
but then when my friend,
for everyone listening out there, buy those Rausch albums.
I am
Buy them. They're physical CDs on the Bandcamp. Go get them.
physical
Go get them.
CDs.
There you go. We needed that shameless plug at some point, so that was a nice.
Yeah, and it's like, well, the thing is, I understand from both standpoints that digital and physical. Digital is easier for you to access from any of your devices. You're not going to be expected to go and say, "Well, I got these CDs. I want to go listen to them in my car." This is going to be a pain in the butt to always bring. So get the thumb drive, especially if your car has one of those things, or you make your own mix. Remember mix tapes, but mix CD that you put your favorite songs, that the ones that is going to be perfect for while you're driving.
One thing that so few people realize, and it's one of those things you're not going to probably get enough people to realize it. How do you create a revolution? Let me know. Is people don't realize that the quality of the audio, right? So I was just having a conversation earlier today about this. Like, you, as an artist, you slave and you work forever, and it takes forever to get, and people don't know why that is. I mean, that's a super long conversation in of itself, but it takes a certain time commitment, energy, effort to get a finalized, commercially, quote unquote, releasable, professional level in a lot of technical ways, not just in like an opinion, like, oh, this is professional, but to get it to that level of release, if you're really taking your career seriously and everything, there's a lot that goes into it. And so, all the memes that go around Facebook and everywhere else about I forget what the exact thing is, but it's the equivalent of like, you've got this great quality picture and then it comes out in this tiny little pixelated thing, like your audio is so high quality, if you got a guy like Rich Mauser, like we do, he creates these masterpieces sonically, and then they go on to all the online stuff that people grab them off of, and it's such low resolution, such low quality. A lot of people don't realize it. A lot of people don't care. A lot of people can't hear the difference. I get all that. But if you care about music at all, you take the time, you A/B it, you hit play on Spotify, and then you hit play on the CD, gasp. There's a huge quality difference if you're really comparing closely. The issue is just the general interest in music itself is on such a downward. I think. I mean, in some ways, there's arguments that it's coming back finally, like more recently. And when we swim in those waters of progressive music or something, we can kind of deceive ourselves and be wishfully, bliss, ignorance is bliss, everything's great. But, back to your thing, like people got to make a living. And that's why like Jordan Rudess, even himself, he's, taken his people to Patreon after the first 10 minutes of his podcast that he's doing, and I get it. I respect it. I think that a lot of people might not understand, but there needs to be a way to survive and live, because you put, it takes money. It takes money to make this music. And then when you're not seeing any kind of return, you got to get creative and come up with all these limited edition packages and so forth to try to battle against the the streaming.
Yeah.
Streaming's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So fighting it is kind of futile. But I think what I'm trying to say is, if there's any way, and it's a tall order, but if there's any way to get all these formats to coexist peacefully at some point. I mean, the cassette tape, vinyl, vinyl's been back. The cassette tape in a weird way is having a small bump of return. CDs, I think it's been basically acknowledged, are never going to completely die. I think it's acknowledged they're about as at a low point as they'll probably ever be. It's plateaued at a very low point, but there's still a respect for the audio quality from enough people that there's still an audience that buys them, even though, the average guy off the street, you ask him, be like, I haven't bought a CD in 20 years, surveying the general public, but, statistically speaking, they're out there. They're still out there.
I have a lot of friends that are, that they're all they're doing is buying the digital albums. And I was talking with the last week. I'm like going, now if you make a digital album, is it still traditionally an album, or should it be called a collection of songs? Because it's not, because with digital, an album can be anywhere from 1 hour to 17 hours because you got no limits. Whereas on a CD, you got the 80-minute limit or 79 point something minute limit.
The stores do have limits, but you're right. It's a lot more flexible in that case. For me, again, what it all comes back to is just the quality of the audio, because a CD, so okay, to be clear, digital audio can be higher quality than CD, and a lot of times is, right? So a CD is 44.1, right, and 16-bit. That's what it is. It's 44K sampling, 16-bit. iTunes did this thing, mastered for iTunes, right? So if you go on iTunes, which still exists as of this second, you'll see MFIT, right? Branded on certain releases. When we see MFIT, I made sure to do that for my last album, Book 2. You'll see MFIT. It's actually a higher quality audio than a CD. I think Tidal is a service that has higher quality. But again, how many people really know that? How many people really know and care, again, and can hear it? There's got to be a lot of check boxes hit for a person to get triggered to be like, okay, I'm actually going to take action and I'm going to consume with my money the higher quality audio thing, the general public, to get them educated. Educations, it all starts with education. And I don't know.
Well, for me, I listen to CDs like 99 point something percent of the time on the headphones.
Me too.
Only because, honestly, the real only reason is my musical taste and my girlfriend's musical taste are polar opposites. So I like to listen to here, and the other reason is I have a slight hearing issue, so I have
Hmm.
to. I always have to listen to something a little louder,
Hmm.
and that. So I learned from years ago to listen to things on the headphones. You know, not because I'm not allowed to listen to it out. It's just that I'm being a little more respectful of my surroundings. So it's like I love listening to it in the headphones, and especially nowadays with the releases that they put the 5.1
Hmm.
releases of
Right.
albums on either a DVD or a Blu-ray. It's fun to listen to. Pop them into the Blu-ray machine and then hear them over there, and it's like I couldn't. I'm not one of these kind of persons that I can figure out the difference between the 5.1 and going down to the uh, details of the difference. But you can hear it, especially when you're headphones. You hear so many more sounds than you do out of the speaker.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And Mauser, a lot of these like transatlantic albums, a lot of these albums he's done, I think he's done some 7.1 mixes as well, which I don't have the means at the moment to actually benefit from, because you have to have a certain speaker setup to really appreciate the
right.
surround the way it's meant. But at some point in my life, I will have the multi-gazillion dollar listening experience. I've made that vow. That's the next huge purchase that's in my life, is like the right setup to have the 7.1 and to be able to hear these mixes in all their glory. I think Steven Wilson remixed all those King Crimson albums himself, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, in 5.1 or 7.1, I'm not sure. But it's like I'd love to go back and listen to all those Crimson albums the right way, but so again, it's a niche. I think what is the moral of the story here? We're talking about niche market of people, and how do you expand that? How do you have any hope of opening that up? And that's kind of one of my big devotions in life, is try to find a way for that guy who might not have cared to
right.
give it a second look and be like, oh, I get it. It is better this way, but you have to
Someone,
get the attention spans to bump up a little bit for that to all happen too. So
someone in the chat thing. Do you know a guy named Robert Schindler?
I do. Hey, Robert.
And he said something. DVD, audio, and Blu-ray. Like Steven Wilson uses Yes Title, Bus, and Amazon HD All Stream High Res.
Now,
That was like a different language for me.
well, let me hold on. Let me keep that ball rolling. So, Robert, or anybody at all, when you say high res, I mean, so what is, and I don't know the answer to this. I guess I should. What is the maximum capability as of March 2021 for streaming high res? What does that mean? I mean, I don't think, especially, then you're going to run it to a Bluetooth, or so. I don't think you're going to get like a 96K. I mean, unless I'm totally missing something, I don't think you're going to get like a 96K 24-bit. I mean, streaming entails compression to some extent. I'm not a technical guru to understand all the bandwidth stipulations, but I don't know if you're getting an answer there, but I don't know what the actual specs are like.
Well, he
When you
said
say
20. He said 2496 up to 24 128.
streaming, is that
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
I learned something.
Yeah,
Thanks, Robert.
yeah.
There's hope for us. There's hope for music. That's reassuring if that's the case. That's great. It comes at a cost. I mean, these services, they put their paywalls up, they're going to make you pay for it. So then we're back to that conversation. Like, how do you motivate enough people to care and to hear it enough to care and to realize that there is such a thing to think about caring about, and then can you hear it, and then are you motivated enough to do the monetary contribution. I mean, there's so much that has to fall into place, whereas back in the day you just bought a CD and that was it. So again, it's educated, Robert's an educated individual, if I'm not mistaken. If we had, I've said this jokingly my entire career so far, Robert, if there were 5 million of you, the world would be saved. Everyone would all hold hands. There'd be no war. We would all just be, blissfully enjoying quality music together and singing Kumbaya in varying time signatures. But the world isn't so much full of Roberts. I mean, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Enter joke here, but no, that's great. That's great to know that that's a real thing. But again, we got to get, I don't know. I guess I've always been bitten by that bug. Some people are like, hey man, I just do what I do. I don't care. And there is that part of me, but still it's like, if we're all in this together, then we all got to chip in, pitch in, and, care as much as Robert does. So,
well, a little brief history of my listening habits. Up until 1980, whatever was on the radio, I didn't even care. It wasn't important enough for me to find out details of the bands that I was listening to. I couldn't even begin to tell you what bands I heard back then, other than the obvious, like the Beatles and, some of the, then in the 80s, listening to Pink Floyd on the radio, the usual suspects that you hear. But what to me was, I think, started me down the rabbit hole started in 1980 when a friend of mine on my birthday gave me a cassette of Permanent Waves. And it just came out like in January. So this was in April.
Right.
And I'm like going, why are you giving me this CD? I mean, this tape. I never heard of this band. And I go, okay. So I just put it in my boombox when I was alone. And I listened to it and I said, okay, I think I know why this guy gave it to me. He was the first person in a long line of people that expanded my musical palette to the point where I started caring about what I'm listening to. And the next one, from that point, I got the classic Yes on cassette, Queen's Greatest Hit on cassette.
Yay.
And what else did I get? Oh, I got the first ELP on cassette. And then it just died down in the mid 80s when another friend pushed me in a different direction of thrash metal, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, all this kind of stuff. So I went down that hole. And then in 1990 was, I think, for me, pardon the pun, was a point of no return because I worked at a record store, and the manager there, he was so tired of me and this other guy playing all this thrash music. So he's like, okay, he says, I got a compromise for you. I know you don't like the punk that I've been playing, but I was like, okay. So he put on King Crimson Red, and then all of a sudden the big light bulb hit over my head. And I was like going, that is what I've been looking for all this time. That kind of, just the structures of the songs. I was like, oh my God, it had that aggression, but then it had a beauty to it.
It's the whole package.
I hadn't heard, it was, so it's like, that was what I was looking for. And so from that point on, it just kept on going more and more down that rabbit hole. And that's what, I think that what's missing from kids, or I shouldn't say kids, a certain age group and younger, is they're only listening to what media is telling them to listen to.
Now we're gonna go down this road. This is a very long conversation.
Oh yeah. Well,
it's always been that way, and that took me a long time to realize. It's always been that way. the chicken egg thing is, what is that which media is spoon feeding to the people? I wrote a paper on this in college. I called it Artainment, the balancing of heart and brains, when heart and brains unite. That's why Queen is the greatest thing ever, because they mastered artistic integrity and musical substance injected into a commercial vehicle. I wrote a paper on this. So there was a time, now I'm sounding like I'm the 80-year-old dinosaur. Maybe I am. Damn it. But there was in my day when record companies and the business machine actually invested dually. They invested properly into music, like music that is music. And that's a crazy, subjective, weird thing that I just said. I get it. But so there's always been money behind whatever is in the mainstream, the top 40. It is all money. But the balancing act of money and business has never been more lopsided than in the past couple of decades. I wrote a paper on that. I've written a couple of papers. I've written a paper on this as a middle schooler. I was pretty hardcore. You tripped the trigger in me. I'm sorry, but
that's all right. No,
when I was in middle school, I wrote a paper on this, like, because already, like, music wasn't allowed to have a solos anymore. Like jazz wasn't mainstream. Rock wasn't allowed to have a solo, like there was nothing. So music started to lose all of its stuff. And we all know why that happened. I'm not going to go into that right now, but there's certain things that came along and triggered music history to go one way as opposed to the other. But there's always been money behind it. It's just, that late 60s. I had an advisor in college that told me that late 60s, early 70s thing, it was just the perfect storm, for lack of a better word, but in a good way. It had to do with the culture, the whole world. It was the music, but it was the culture, and it was everything coming together. Where adventurous, outside the box, envelope pushing, coloring outside the lines, forward thinking, experimentation kind of music was allowed to thrive, and it had the record business behind it to do so. And he said, Doug, that exact situation, even though music is cyclical and it goes and comes around again and in cycles, but he said that exact situation may never exactly reproduce itself. And again, it's like, okay, I don't need to have that exact situation again, but again, it's a balancing act. And the fact that, like, you just hit that trigger where music is all about, what sells, and then at some point in those mid late 90s 2000s, the record business realized that, and this is my opinion, but I'm super strong about it, people will fight me, I know this is like a super controversial thing, but the record business realized that, oh, why are we putting all this money into musicianship? Like, we're putting all of our investment into like work upon work, when it can just be like simple, stupid, dumbed down, like, whatever. So it's like, what caused the attention spans to deflate and truncate over time? It's a total chicken or egg, and there's no definitive answer on that, but everything kind of influenced the other thing. So the record business, I mean, this is my belief. I mean, I worked with Sony for a brief time in the early 2000s. So I was in the belly of the beast for a little while, and I got to see a little bit of what goes on. So anyway, it's just my personal opinion. Don't throw your virtual tomatoes at me, please. But I'm just saying, like, the record labels realized, oh, this could be so much easier. Why are we worried about musicianship and marketing things that are like demanding more from the listener, when we can just dumb it down and we can just sell the simplest stuff? And anyway, that's my opinion as to how this whole de-evolution happened in the first place.
Yeah, I've seen several videos on YouTube where the guys basically explain that into a detail of how, what is it, the certain beats that they use. And it's like, to me, it's like you said, I like to have something, even if it's a simple song.
I love simple songs. I love a good simple song.
I mean, but something, I noticed some of those ones that as a kid listening to them, you think, oh, that's that. But then as you get older, you start hearing the layers of those simple songs, and they're not, and it's not as simple as originally, you know, at least for me, that originally I heard it as like all of a sudden I'm hearing things in the music. I'm like going, this little song does what some of the big 10, 20-minute epic songs do. I mean, I can't give
Yes.
you details on stuff, but it's like, so it's like, I understand, you know, especially radio, you know, they want certain, they need, in order to make a living, they need to have a certain amount of songs, you know, in there. And that's why when going back to Queen, when, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody came out, that was like, you know, that scared radio stations because it's like they were trying to promote that song and they would, you know, I remember reading about it and watching videos that they were trying very hard for them to, you know, do snip, snip, snip to
Yeah.
make it radio
Oh yeah.
friendly. And they said, no, it's like,
It never happened.
this is how it is. You don't want to play it? Fine. Don't play it. You know, but this is what we're giving you to play.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's, you know, another person that did it, and I'm sure you probably might like the artist is Kate Bush. She didn't,
Oh yeah, sure,
she
sure,
didn't,
sure.
on her first album, she basically told them the song Wuthering Heights is going to be the single. They wanted, I forget what other song, and she said, no, that's going to be the single. And they gave in to her. And from that point on, the record produced, you know, the record executives did not say no to her because she was very opinionated on it. And unfortunately, you know, her popularity was more from that first album, I think it was 78 to into the 80s. And then, you know,
And
her music,
tying your opinion, the opinionatedness idea with Bohemian Rhapsody, putting those two stories together, that's how Bohemian Rhapsody, of course, went on to have this the mega long life that it did thanks to Wayne's World. I heard that
oh
story
yeah,
that Mike Myers for Wayne's World, he insisted on Bohemian Rhapsody, and he had that kind of a fight with the producers. I maybe you're well aware of this as well, but I
oh yeah.
ran into a very specific article on that, like just how intensely he had to fight. I think they actually wanted Welcome to the Jungle because that was like a more current thing. So I'm like, oh, I
Right.
probably would have been happy either way. But thanks, you know, thank God that Mike Myers stuck to his guns, and then they actually ended up with Bohemian. I mean, can you imagine that scene without Bohemian Rhapsody? Like, no one can, right?
There's
Like,
no, it's like, it's just one of those moments that it's like you couldn't change it. Even if you wanted to, you couldn't change it.
it's iconic. It's there
I don't think
forever,
it,
and
I don't think it would have worked with any other song.
I agree.
I mean, to the degree that it, you know, we seen it, and I mean, it's like, it's funny. It's like that song up until that point felt so personal to me. You know, like it was my song,
Yes.
and I didn't know how, because growing up in the '80s, now it's weird. Listening to Queen was kind of like a almost, I want to say taboo, because everybody was listening to all the heavier stuff. And
Sure.
here I was listening to Queen, you know, and I got into them in the '80s. So the first, I mean, I did get all the '70s cassettes, but then I got the '80s cassettes as they were coming on, and the '80s compared to the '70s was, you know, there were two different uh, beasts, so to speak, and so everybody else was listening to the heavier stuff. So I wasn't going to admit to listening to Queen. And I heard a couple of people, my friends, would go,
Yeah.
"Oh, Queen, such a wimpy band," you know. And I
Sure.
was like, okay, then I'm not going to tell them that I listened to it.
Good.
So,
I
but
have
then when
similar
Wayne's
parallel stories. I feel for you.
and
I've lived the
and then
same
when
thing.
but then when Wayne's World brought it out, it was almost like Wayne's World was saying, "Hey, it's okay to listen to this band,"
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it felt like, you know, the band was mine and probably a couple dozen other people's, and then all of a sudden, it was millions of people. I
For
mean,
me,
granted, they were millions of people before, but it's like it was like such a select millions. Now it
it
was
was everybody. It was everybody. For me, the single most like profound thing about the whole Wayne's World thing was just that it worked in a way that was not a throwback. It was not just nostalgia. It was not just to be ironic. So often we see things become big again, but it's from an ironic standpoint. It's from a, cliche kind of, Bohemian Rhapsody was like the biggest thing in the early 90s because it was embraced as an awesome song, period. It thrived and soared on its own musical merits. And that's what fuels my own passion so deeply, is like, that's what I want to see. Again, I want to see that. I want to see that in music, that kind of just mass scale embracement of music for music's sake, of quality. I mean, there's other kinds of quality music. It doesn't have to be exactly the Queen formula that you and I love so much, but just any kind of, I mean, people will call us narrow-minded and say, oh, our ears aren't open enough because there's stuff out there. And, to a point, there's always a point to that, but not the way something like, Bohemian Rhapsody is a unique thing. We don't have to just dwell on that one song. It's not my favorite Queen song, but it's to be respected forever. And it's a hell of a masterpiece. So actually tying back to just some of the Rausch music, if we can, because you hit on something that I want to, you're talking about simple songs, because this is actually a really important thing that happened with me actually is, and I will give credit where credit's due. I will officially give a shout out that David Ivory was right. And I'm going to hear it about that. But he's the producer. He's known for, he helped Hailstorm get their start. He's responsible for the beginnings of Hailstorm and The Roots, which is Jimmy Fallon's house band by now. So he's a pretty well-known Philly producer. He and I stumbled to each other in between my first and second albums. And, he saw something in me, I guess, that, he agreed to work with me, whatever, based off of my album one, based off of my first album. And we were talking about this. And I said, because like anyone, you can't just necessarily listen to my stuff one time and get it. I mean, that's kind of to a fault. You get, just like any, music that you end up really, you got to listen to it a couple times. And so it took him a while. Eventually he did come to me and he said, okay, Doug, I get it. And that was like the coolest thing, it's like this big hotshot producer like gets this kind of outside the box, it's not the everyday thing that I'm doing. And he said, but I'm like, oh, here it comes. He said, because you're like, okay, you're trying to, pick up where Queen left off or something like this, in it, in your own way. But he said, Bohemian Rhapsody was on Queen's fourth. Actually, he didn't know it was fourth. I'm giving him I'm inserting for benefit of story. But, his point was that wasn't on their first album. And I didn't get what he was saying at first. And I actually resisted, as human psychology is to do. You resist what people says when you don't want to hear it, and then you come back to it. But he said, Doug, you got to earn the right to make Bohemian Rhapsody. I said, what do you mean? I don't want to waste time. I'm like, we got to go. I don't want to waste any time. Make like, the simple, like Keep Yourself Alive, which is a great song. Don't get me wrong. But, make like 10 of those. And then like somehow that earns me the right to make my big 10-minute epics. That doesn't make, like, what are you talking about? But he's like, if Bohemian Rhapsody, now, of course, none of us have a crystal ball and none of us can go back in time and create an alternate reality. But he's saying, Doug, if Bohemian Rhapsody was on the first record, he said it wouldn't have gone the way that history ended up going for Queen. He's like, you have to get the attention, get the traction. And then when the moment's right, that's when you kind of unleash that. He said, you did it all wrong. He said you did it backwards. Now actually there's no 10-minute songs on my first album, but there's a lot of meaty 6 to 7 minute things that I was quite proud of, my own little Bohemian Rhapsodies. And he said you did it all wrong. He said you got to give the public one undeniable get in, get out, straightforward. And he in the same breath said, well, but you'll still be you, Doug. Don't worry, you'll still, because that was what I'm like, no, I don't want to. And I put on the two simple songs because I embrace. So this is where I'm going with this. We're talking about simple music. Like a good Queen album. Queen's my template. you got your big epic, but you also have your quote unquote simple songs. They're just songs. Hey man, they're just songs. And on my first record, the two simple songs are called BPMS and Minimalism. And those songs were the anchor points. They were to be the palate cleansers, the anchor points. Queen has a great example of this. There's a beautiful Queen song I love so much called Long Away, right? Long Away. And that is like that exact function. It just like clears the palate, and it's a nice poignant song on its own. It's not filler. We're not using the F word here. I'm never
Right.
going to put a millisecond of filler on what I do. And I maintain, except for that Hot Space record, neither did Queen ever really that happened. So what happened was David Ivory said, you need that, 3-minute thing, 3 to 4 minute, get in, get out commercial thing. And then that's how Good Day happened. We did this single called Good Day, which was I actually had this song kicking around anyway. It wasn't like, again, forced or like I tried overly hard for it, but we wanted to have a get in, get out, good commercial, whatever you will, song. And when I played Minimalism and BPMS for him, he said, yeah, like he liked them, but he wanted to take that like one step farther. And I think those songs are great. I mean, they're my babies. I stand behind them. But he said, just remember that, and this goes back to your point, like just because, both of our points actually, he said, just because a song is simple, like always keep that in mind. He's like, I know you know this, but just to reiterate, like just because a song is simple, that doesn't mean that we commercial record company people think that it's automatically great. Like, it's not like we think like a real complex song is bad, but a real like dumbed down simple song is automatically good. And this is going back to your point about really digging into, you said, the layers and the craftsmanship of a really I always go back to Tom Petty. Tom Petty's my guy for simple music. If you break apart the craftsmanship of a good Tom Petty song, there's so much going on there, the ear candy. Right. And the song as a songwriter, he wasn't the best musician in the world, but of all the guys we lost in the past 3, 4 years, 3, 4, 5 years ago, like we started losing people. And I think it's just going to keep happening. It's inevitable, but we started this losing these real, big, iconic, meaningful, at a quicker clip. And of all the guys we lost, of all of them, Tom Petty's the one and only guy that made me cry. I cried when Tom Petty happened, because he had such a meaningful impact. Whenever people accuse me of not appreciating simple music, I point right to him and I say, he was the master of simple music. He's an influence. The same way Dream Theater, that's where you get the diversity. Like the same way Dream Theater influenced some of what I do, Tom Petty influences. So anyway, we made this commercial song, Good Day, and then we did it again. So we did 2 of them on the last Book 2 record. We did Good Day, and then we did a song called Rise or Rise Again, which ended up getting retitled to Swan Song. And these were, again, those 2 anchor points, the simple songs. But if you break apart what's going on in those songs, and in fact, it's funny, Rich Mauser, the engineer, just sent me, I'm in the process of getting all the what's called stems. I don't know if you know, that's a music term for not like kick, snare, hi-hat, tom 1, tom 2, tom 3. I have all that, like the raw things, but stems are what the engineer does to sort of subgroup chunks of the song and deliver you the like a chunk as like with all the effects that he put on. So it's like I have my vocal track, just for those of you out there who might not know what we're talking about. It's like you get the vocal track back, but with all the effects, with all the reverbs and the delays and the EQing, and then the drums you get as one stereo track that's all the drums with all the effects he put on. So you get these stems. And I'm going back, I just got it last week from him, and I'm listening to these stem tracks for Swan Song. And I'm like, it's like I'm getting to do this with my own song all over again, because it's like, wow, like I didn't even know half the stuff that he's doing. Like I just like Neil Morse does with him. Like we just submit our babies, and then Rich takes a while, I'll leave it at that, to properly deliver them. But in the end, it becomes just like worth every penny and every moment, because he's just the master. But breaking down like what he really did just with this one song, and I'm gonna have him do it to more songs, but now I can listen to what he did to Swan Song, like kind of layer by layer, all these different elements, like what he really did to the drums, what he did to my vocal, what he did to the piano. He did a lot of really interesting things to the piano in terms of compression and certain effects they put on the piano. And these things you don't really notice in the final mix, but when you break them apart, back to your layers thing, it's like this is each individual element in the song and what serves the greater, you know, cumulative sum of the parts and makes even a simple song, you know, either very good and effective or, you know, something that will fall flat and not really deliver. So it's just, I'm a fan of music as much as I'm a creator of music. You know, every day I have to listen to music. I have to listen to music because I'm always discovering new things, learning new things. And that's how an artist can ultimately grow with their own output, right?
Well, I had heard, you know, going to your music, when I first heard your first album, you know, I did hear a lot of, it was almost like, it felt like it was a 70s album, but up and updated with all the, you know, all the new studio tricks, like you said, that going on. Um, but then I was going, okay, now I'm listening to it and I said, I hear something else. What do I hear? And then at the time I had them in my collection. There's a Swedish band called
Oh
ACT.
no, you're killing me.
And I was like
You're really
going,
gonna bring them up?
oh
So
no, what?
no, wait. Quick pause. Okay. The drummer, my drummer who played on the Book 2 album and played some shows with us, his name's Steve Laro. He was always ribbing me about that because he was always saying that ACT, he always said that it's interesting you say that. He's always said there's a shared element with ACT and me, and there's a lot of similar flavors, and that I would really like them. And I went to try to actually buy their CDs, bringing everything full circle, and they were out, like I couldn't get them or whatever. And I'm so stubborn. I'm the only guy in my generation that's like this, I know, but like I refuse to really absorb the masterpiece with that. Although maybe I'll take Robert up. But anyway, no, continue. But I just, so tell me, you guys. So what's the ACT Rausch link? I'm all ears.
The link is that I think the link is Queen. I think the link is Queen.
But a lot of bands are influenced by Queen.
Yeah, but I hear it more. I hear it more than other bands. I mean, other band. Okay, or let me put it to you this way: you and them aren't trying; it's coming out naturally. Whereas some of these bands are forcing themselves. I want to do a Queen song, so I'm going to force my, you know, the guitar to sound like Brian's. I'm going to force the drums to sound like Roger, you know, and so on and so forth.
Well, thank you.
You didn't force it. You basically, it was, I want to say it was channeled through you. Whereas, you know, they force it. A lot of bands force.
That's the best compliment someone can hear. So,
well, actually, after, you know, I got to listen, you know, when I was listening to the CDs again, that's where I think it's, that's why I stopped doing CD reviews for various reasons. And one of them was because there was too much emphasis on deadlines of getting the review out. Right, and sure. I really think that a majority of the reviews that I did on my site, had I had a little more freedom to write them, I think they would have been much better. But, you know, again, they're in print, you know, and I do them at that. But that's why I won't accept anybody's demo, because I don't want to be controlled by them to saying, okay, well, you know, they sent it to me in February. I need it by the end of March. Well, it's not going to happen because, you know, this is not my profession. This is truly just my hobby, and this is my way. Like I said before we started, I said this is my way of making sure people know more about the artists that I'm talking about.
Yay!
And that's what I want. You know, I want more people to know who you are and where you come from. And then, of course, you know, we're going to put all the fun links down below so that people go to it, you know.
Thank you kindly.
And anybody that misses this, you know, any of your friends that miss this, it's going to be on YouTube, so they'll get to see it that way too.
Well, do you
And
have a
that's
favorite? I'm just curious to know, like, of all this this Rausch material that you've subjected yourself to, like,
um
do you have a personal favorite or two? Not that there's a gun to your head, but I am always curious in doing the survey.
well the I like the first album because the first album, again, you're going back to Queen. It sounds like it's the earlier part of Queen, and the second album sounds like not so much the later part, but it's the continuation of the.
Okay.
And I'm not saying I'm not, and so it's like I'm not saying that you're doing Queen albums. I'm just saying that it's the just the
It's an influence, that's all.
it's an influence, and I hear it in both of those albums, and it's like, so that's why, you know and I'm sure like a lot of people that have already owned these albums wonder what the the next one is going to sound like.
I'm
We
wondering too.
always we all, as the audience, you would always wonder, are they gonna go forward, or are they gonna do? I mean, I know several bands that, one in particular, that you have no idea what the next album is going to sound like, and it seems like, they get like a 50-50. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I hate it.
Right.
Pain of Salvation.
Oh, they're one of my favorites.
I mean,
They're one
but
of my
each
favorites.
album is so different from the previous
They're one of
one,
my favorites. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and that's one of the bands that it's like, okay, if you want a band that never stays still, that's the band. I mean,
So good.
of all of the most, the modern bands, it's like, but with each album, that it's Pain of Salvation. It's just Pain of Salvation going a different route than what you want. It's like the fans, like,
Right.
they want that again. Here goes back to the fans, or similar sounds. They wanted almost an exact duplicate of the Perfect Element. That's what they've been wanting for years, and it's
Right.
like, but to me, it's
Why?
like, why? I'm like,
I mean,
why? What?
Queensryche made Operation Mindcrime 2. I mean, but did you really need that?
No, I
So
honestly, that was one of their later albums that I listened to it maybe twice,
yeah.
and I returned it.
Wow.
It just,
Wow, you just one-upped me, sir. I wasn't gonna
I
go
just,
that extreme.
I just returned it. I said,
That's funny.
I heard it. That's all I needed. I thought it was an interesting idea, but I think it's like they made their statement with the first one,
Yeah, and
and
then
I think,
yeah,
and just leave it
yeah,
be.
yeah.
Sometimes sequels don't always
Well,
work.
I can just tell you this, that Rausch 3 will be me. And that's what those closest to me always kind of say, is like, well, it's very you. So, I mean, not everyone that listens to my music knows me, of course, but it'll be me in the same way that 1 and 2 were me, and it will not be, a carbon copy of anything that came before. And anything that does sound like something that came before, it's simply because it's still me, not because
Exactly.
doing any kind of formula thing. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm as excited as you are. Because I gotta go ahead.
It's to me, it's like you can tell when uh it's a carbon copy, and you can tell when it's just a continuation
Yeah,
of the artist.
that's it.
You really can tell. I mean,
Let me
and
do you like now this is a little out of the progressive wheelhouse, but how are you at all familiar with the Tom Waits at all?
I'm aware of him. I
Okay.
haven't really heard his music.
Love him to death. Love him to death. Super eclectic, adventurous. I mean, it's not under prog rock, but again, I listen to so much different stuff. But this guy, he went from piano, crooning, loungy, jazzy stuff in the 70s to really out there, super experimental, so diverse. It's exactly what you're talking about. Every single one of his albums, every single one, he's doing what his soul in this year, in this moment, is commanding him to do. He's truly an artist's artist. He does whatever's
Right.
coming out of him, you know, again, and it's some of the stuff is almost unlistenable because it's really challenging. It's hard to explain, but it's really challenging to listen.
Oh, yeah.
But he's always growing and doing different stuff. He's an example of a guy, Pain of Salvation, and Tom Waits. There's a link, and hopefully Rausch. That's what we, and Queen and a lot of other guys, but there's a lot of guys that do formulaic stuff, and it does rub you the wrong way, and it I think it does a disservice to the ongoing branding is a cold sterile word, but the ongoing legacy, shall we say, of the trajectory of the artist catalog. I mean, maybe there's very few artists that have all home runs every single time, but I think that's why I pointed Tom Waits. He's a guy that, you know, even like his, you know, what would you say, worst isn't the word, worst album, least whatever album, but it's still an artistic statement of who he was in that moment. And that,
Right.
whether you like an artist or not, I think that's all you can ask of us. So
that, you know, well, you know, I think with me, as I'm growing older, I'm more open-minded to different styles of music. I mean, I was very what I call tunnel vision in the 80s to a certain style, and then in the
that's
early
okay.
90s, to a certain style. And it really wasn't until maybe 15, almost 20 years ago that I just started going, okay, well, let me listen to some of the stuff. And then also let me go back to the stuff that I listened to at the beginning and then revisit it and see if it stood the test of time.
Yep.
And a majority of the stuff did. And it's like, and there were some things that I've gotten in the past year that I only had on cassette back in the day. And it's like, and then now having it on CD, I was like going, but you know, I mean, there was bands like in the past 2 years, a friend of mine on Facebook, he always puts album that he's listening to, you know, every day he puts a new one up or a new band that he or a band that he loves, you know, his featured, and always puts a link down to YouTube to, and there was two bands that stood out just the way he described them. A band called Trillion and a band called Zon. And both of them, Trillion started in the 70s, and they put out their album the same year Van Halen 1 came out.
Oh, 78?
78 came out, and it was like, it was like, I want to say, they were kind of like Sticks on steroids.
Really?
They were just ultra punk. And
I'll put it on my list.
it had like some Queen vibe to it, but not like, you know, overly that. And then the one Zon, only thing I know of them is they're from Canada. I think they're from the same area that Rush is from. And they have, again, a little bit of a Queen, a little bit of a Styx, and a little bit of another Canadian band, Saga. A little bit of all that kind of mixed in.
I only know them a little bit, but yeah.
But it's like, you know, these were bands that I never heard of before, and if it wasn't for this guy, I probably still wouldn't have heard of them. And it's like, this is why I'm open to when people tell me bands, even if it was bands from 20, 30, 40 years ago or 50 years ago, you know, it's still gonna interest me because, you know, it must mean enough to them for them to recommend it. So,
yep.
You know, and it's like, and of course, you know, like every song hits you, every band hits you at certain points in your life in which you know, you needed them for whatever reason, you know, good or bad, you know, happy, sad, you know, you just needed those bands and those songs. And
amen.
so when someone recommends me something from 1975, I'm like going, oh, I'm not going to think of, oh, I'm going to think, okay, now I got to go find out why they recommended it to me. You know, and then when I hear it, and if I know the person well enough, I'm like going, again, that little light bulb goes off, and you're like going, my goodness, okay, now I understand that. That was pop, it could have been a radio hit back in the day, and it just went in one ear out the other because, I just wasn't caring about that. But then going back to fresh ears, you hear new things, even on stuff that you heard countless times before. But if you
That's it.
just sit down and listen to it, not be in, like nowadays you hear stuff over in your doctor's office, you hear some classic rock going over their
It's so
speakers,
funny that you say that. That just happened to me the other day, actually. So yeah, it's weird.
and it's just the funniest thing. I mean, granted, when I was growing up, all you heard is the standards, from the 40s, 50s, and
Right,
60s,
right, right,
that's what you heard over there,
right.
in the doctor's office or the grocery store. That's what you heard over.
So that's good. There's good news and bad news to that. The good news is some of this stuff is standing the test of time and folding itself into the timeless vocabulary. But on the other side, hopefully it's not, reflecting in the wrong way and turning
Right.
into Muzak function as its long-term, but yeah,
Oh yeah.
we'll have yet
But
to see how it all turns out.
yeah, so it's like when someone recommends you something, used to be a long time ago, I would just say, okay, yeah, whatever. Now it's like, okay, now it's like like you just told me about Tom Waits. How did they say that's the homework for that I need.
So you're gonna go look into Tom Waits, and I'm definitely gonna get on this ACT bandwagon. It's been long enough. I just need to
Yeah,
figure out how I'm gonna do it.
yeah.
Well,
Another
so
band,
you were gonna
another
say,
band.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, another band that follows into the Queen category is Sweet.
Okay, I know them a little bit.
I've been getting their CDs over the past 2 years.
Okay,
I think they got like 8 CDs, and I think I got like 4 so far. It's like,
I'll check them out. I'll
but
check
I'm
them
told
out.
that the
Yeah.
four that I got are the essentials. But I tend to be in certain bands be a completist, and other bands I stick with eras of them.
Right.
It's really and it's not like a formula that I put to every band, because every band that's they do something different in how they change their eras, whereas and there's other bands that they go with the times, but then they retain their sound. And I think one of the bands that I think best did that was Rush.
Sure.
I mean, when they went from the 70s into the 80s,
Sure.
they retained who their core. And then again, when they went into the 90s and into the 2000s, they just retained their core, but they kept with what was going on. But without, I wouldn't want to say where they totally immersed themselves into it. You know, that's just one of the bands. I'm sure there's quite a few other bands out there that have done that. But then there's bands that when disco came out, they kind of just went head on into it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, even Queen got a bad rap for a while, I think, because I wasn't really alive at the time, but yeah, when Another One Bites the Dust was the whole thing, right? They kind of had a bad, that's the thing. An artist gets an overall kind of overview later in life. You can kind of look from bird's eye view, like forest from the trees. You can look at their whole career, like Queen and Tom Waits. You like, but both of those artists are like, if you're stuck in any one period living in that moment, you could have a totally life or death kind of perspective towards that artist that might be tarnished, for time going forward, depending. So it so much has to do with our life situations and everything at the time. But so you said, what I was going to say, you said ACT, but you were going to draw another parallel if you had a gun to your head, because I always like asking.
Well, also too is ACT. I'm not sure. There's another band that was right there. Well, I want to go back to Sweet because
Okay.
it just because I think it's because of the vocals, the way the vocal
Okay.
sounds are,
Huh.
because Sweet is one of those bands that had multi-layered vocals, even though they had several lead singers, but the lead guy, uh, he had passed away. But almost all of the band except for one guy of the original lineup is left, but he's done a newer version of the band.
Right.
Uh, but they have that thing where it's like, uh, you know how and Queen the high sounds are Roger. I mean those
The
real
absolute
high,
top ones. Right. Right.
and they have that in the suite. They have someone that does the high parts,
Oh,
and then they mix them all together, and it sounds like one person, but like
right.
supersized, and it's like,
Right.
and there's a lot. That's another band that you can say, if someone says they like Queen, I really think that they need to investigate them, and then of course you're going to go down
Cool.
rabbit holes.
Well,
You know,
okay. Yeah.
that's the one thing with you know now I'm going down through so many rabbit holes, you know, all over the place, and it's like sometimes I just have to take a step back and say, okay, well, I already got 20 CDs up on the I'm going to listen to list. I'm going to slow down on those and buy new stuff,
Sure.
until I listen to those 20, because then it's going to go to 20 and it's going to double and double and double.
Right.
So my way of doing things nowadays is 1 month I'll immerse myself in getting a bunch of CDs, and the next month I'll immerse myself in getting a bunch of movies, and I go back and forth. So
Yeah, sure.
I don't um, I don't drown myself in either media, you know. But still, there's so much more that I need in both of um, those medias that I'll never get.
Yeah.
It's there's it would require so much money to get every single album, the essential albums that, you know, when you listen to bands that are coming out, new bands in the past 10, 20 years, where did they get their influences from? You got to,
Yeah.
you like to go investigate all those things. I mean, there's even bands in the past 5 years that I've been listening to that I was like going, okay, now, okay, I got another one for you, and I'm going to actually interview them in June. Is a band. I think they're out of they're East Coast, but I think the Southern East Coast. They're called Evership,
Okay.
and they have like a um, I want to say Spock Beard Sticks,
Oh, okay.
Queen
Yeah,
Queen
sure.
vibe going on,
Yeah.
and they're working on their third album. Here we go. For number three, and that's coming out. Soon, and they're gonna, and that's another band. You know,
Right.
I like everybody to know, because in the '70s there was, with the groups there was a community going on. I mean, you had, your folk singers knew your heavy rock singers, because they would hang out together.
Yeah.
They would hang out together. So it's like there was no boundaries back then. Oh, the heavy rockers need to be over here, and the folk singers need to be over here. The prog guys need to be back there. They
Right.
were all they were all intermingling with each other. They had their different styles, but the styles of music didn't prevent them from being a community. And I think that's what's wrong with in today's music. I always know, especially when you know I fell into it with the heavy metal crowd. Is like
Hmm?
there's nothing but heavy metal, and it's like
Right.
I learned now years later there is more than just heavy metal, and that doesn't make heavy metal any less. It just means that I've grown
Yeah, yeah.
and to learn to appreciate other styles of
Tom
music.
Waits. You're gonna listen to Tom Waits. You're gonna report back to me. This is gonna be great. That's your next growing journey.
Growing journey.
Do you like the other band that's been like I think is really good, that's been doing a good job of trying to like keep it alive on a big level in recent times, but even they've been around for quite a while now, is Muse. Do you like Muse?
Which one was that?
Muse, Muse.
No, I heard there's a bunch of those bands that I've heard of. They
They're
came out what
huge.
in the 90s, right? Or
I
80?
think like 99 maybe was their debut, but I mean they got much bigger, soon thereafter. But I mean,
Right,
I just saw them before the shutdown. I mean, they sell out stadiums, and I mean they're huge. They're a really big band still, and they're the I mean, in my opinion, I think they're the biggest band out there that's doing anything remotely close to, what we're talking about. Huge Queen influence in them. That's why I brought
right,
them up. There's a massive, yeah, you should listen to them if you don't. Yeah, there's a huge Queen influence. I like certain, just like again, different eras, different periods, so different albums are different. I like certain albums more than others, but there's a
right.
huge Queen influence all over them, and it's great. So, well, there, I gave you
Yeah,
some more music to check out.
okay. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of people talk about their last concert experience before the lockdown,
Yep.
and then I've heard bands on the other side that they were just getting ready to do tours, and then they had the lockdown, you know. And at first, if you remember, it was like it was going to be, I think, what was it going to be, like 8 weeks or something like that, or some,
Yeah, I mean, we were basically
some,
getting told like, I mean, this will all be, by June 1st, we'll be, we should be in pretty good shape.
yeah, and it's like, um,
But you don't
and
know. I mean, they didn't know. Nobody knows.
well, the one country that actually honestly did it the best, at least from what I read, is New Zealand, and they're still
Oh
doing it
yeah.
good.
Yeah, like there's
You know,
zero cases, I think.
they
Yeah.
shut, I think they shut the whole country down for 7 or 8 weeks, and then after that, when they opened it up, I think they opened it up little by little, and there was like zero cases. And the minute they had a case, they shut it back down. And I mean, I understand from the standpoint musicians, especially touring ones, that this was the biggest blow to their career. That out of
Well, yeah.
that side of losing a record contract. It's like this was the biggest blow because this is where they were their meat and potatoes. That's where they were getting their money from.
That's right.
And so I understand from that point. I see a lot of them from different styles of music that they're itching. They want to get back. They want to do. Oh, can we just do a club show? Still the same situation, just in those
Right.
smaller smaller level. You can't do it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's like I think the perfect thing is like I've seen quite a few of my friends do it on a solo way. Is one of my friends does a setup where he triggers off different things, and he's done uh, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, and another one's done just him and um, his piano, just playing different songs and singing the different whatever song it was. And it's like the one thing that would be great is if technology got there where everything was synced up perfectly. So someone in this box, that box, that you got let's say you got a four-piece band, and you guys can all play the thing. You have your headphones on, so you just the same way as monitors that you be in sync. But because
Right.
there's such a drag or a lag, whatever the technical term is, between feeds that it's right now it's not possible. But can you imagine? I mean, you'd be able to play your live set. Granted, downside is you're not going to feel what the audience, you're not going to feed off of their energy. That's the only
Right.
downside,
Right.
and
Yeah. That's all you can
but
do though, you know?
yeah, but in the meantime, that's like the next best thing to it's like, you got to make your choices. The other thing too is you got the four guys in your band. Make sure everybody is negative.
Right.
You rent a studio, make sure you get a sound engineer, make sure he's negative. Point the camera, have all him doing the mixing and broadcast it over the internet, and have like that kind of an internet concert,
Sure. Yeah.
charge your money that you normally would charge, and give basically, if needed be, give your audience, your fans, the incentive to doing that. I mean, granted, it's like, look at it this way. You tell them you don't have to drive to the venue. You don't have to, if you're one of these type of people like myself, that I'm not a big people person,
Mm-hmm.
that this is, this is for you. And also too, it's like, if Rausch played in your town, or maybe a few little towns. Now, what if someone in California wanted to see you, but they couldn't afford to come out to you? They turn on their, their internet, and there's the concert right there.
Yeah, it's
It's
probably
like,
the way it's gonna go though, more and more. Is we're probably
I
gonna,
think
when things open back up, there's gonna be a retained element of that, you know.
we have to evolve, because yeah, or else there's. I think people are just going. If I can't do it, the way I want to do, can't go full on touring across the country or the world, I'm not going to do it at all. And I think that's a real bad attitude, because
Right.
you're basically saying, F you to your fans, and if you're doing like a 60-day tour in the United States, you're not hitting every city or every region. So that's, again, here's where that a live feed do wonders. I don't know. I tend to think it's like the people that don't have the money have the ideas. And it's like, the fans need to see their bands or their artists. They need to
Yeah.
see them in some shape or form.
And the artists need the fan, like, you know, everyone needs each other too, you know,
Exactly.
to keep going. So it's
Well, that's why, had you seen, going back to Mike Portnoy did a couple little videos, cover songs that he did just on YouTube with his daughter singing back up.
Yep.
And I'm like going, that's so cool. That's basically, I know it's him thanking his fans, and basically telling his fans, I'm still doing it just because we're in lockdown. I'm still making music,
And in his
and this
case, he's
is,
putting out like 3 gargantuan albums all in the same, like, you know, 6-month period. So,
oh, I know.
but I don't know how he does it.
Another artist that's doing these lockdown cover song videos is Charlie from Anthrax, the drummer.
Oh, really? I haven't seen that.
He's doing stuff from stuff in his genre, and recently he did Fleetwood a couple Fleetwood Mac songs. And I'm like,
Wow.
I never. And then he's did some videos where the cover songs where not only was it doing drums, bass, guitar, and keyboards. And it's like, I never knew he played those, but maybe he learned it during this lockdown. Or maybe he knew it all along and just kind of kept it his little secret.
Speaking of coming full circle here in this whole thing, speaking of covers and artists and stuff like that, Nora Jones, who I love, was doing a bunch of this stuff. I don't, maybe she still is. I'm not up on it all the time, but uh did you see Nora Jones? She did Patience. She did an awesome cover of Patience from her little
Oh
house
no, I didn't see
piano.
that, but
Yeah, and it was pretty cool. She had some chords written in front of her. You could tell, like, it wasn't like the back of her hand like someone else we know.
right.
But no, but it was awesome. I think I love Nora Jones, and just like everything, she's one of those people, like everything she touches is just, it just comes out great in my opinion. And when she goes and does different things. Actually, a bandmate of mine, we had previous discussions over she did an album, I think it was 2012, called Little Broken Hearts, and he couldn't stand it and I still loved it. So it's like, again, back to your Pain of Salvation thing, like you have different opinions as things go along. Tom Waits, all this stuff, but you can't deny that the true artist, is doing, the thing that they're doing. And it's Nora Jones thing with Patience. I mean, it wasn't forced. It wasn't, it was actually pretty cool. It was like she was doing like a timely version of, anyway, go check it out. It's somewhere. It was pretty cool. It's just her at her little home piano, you know,
Yeah,
not so
I
much
mean,
in tune home piano, I might add. Just like, the COVID theme is like, in the moment, raw, here I am.
oh yeah,
And yeah,
I mean, it's done. The COVID lockdown has done so much for people in so many different ways. And I've known a
except
couple
for
people.
except for the monetization, and that's where everyone's getting screwed up, is can't tour and Spotify. Jordan Rudess said that his thing the other day. He said, since Spotify doesn't pay the bills, like I said about that, if you're big like him or big enough like him, you can bring people to your Patreon and
Right.
stuff like that. But a high percentage of the artists out there, it is tricky times. So
Yeah. So it's like that's why I've seen a lot of these guys that doing their little live streams that they have their
yep,
uh, PayPal account
yep. Oh, there's a way to
name up
monetize
there.
those. Yeah, no doubt. It can be
But
done.
it's such on a small scale that
Yes, it's not going to replace what needs to be replaced.
exactly, and it's like but again, that's why I think you know we have to bands have to figure out what to do now that you can't tour. What's next best thing? And then we were talking going back to with Transatlantic doing
Yep.
the different versions of their album, and then different formats, was it LP, CD, and Blu-ray audio? It's like we got to go that route.
As long as
But
the
then
customers got the money for it. I mean, you're also going to
exactly,
lose a lot of
that's
people.
that's the thing, and then when bands or even movies do these limited editions or collector's editions, it's like
They're targeting the
I
niche of their fan base.
yeah,
I mean,
they're
they're
not
targeting.
target. Like for me, when it comes to movies, I'm going to a different subject. Movies, I just want the movie. I don't want the bells and whistles of
Yeah,
these slip covers. What
yeah.
is it? Lentil. It used to be just called three-dimensional covers that you tweak them different directions, and you can
Oh yeah.
see
Uh, yeah. I forget
and
the term for that, but yeah,
stuff like that. I don't
like
need that.
hologram.
Like a hologram.
Yeah.
I don't really need that. That's geared to a collector that when they buy that product,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just going on the shelf.
Sure.
For me, when I buy a product, whether it's music or a movie, it's like it's going into the player to be played.
The one thing
Oh,
we were talking about buying CDs, the one thing that I insisted upon when we put out the second book 2 album is I did insist on having the proper representation of the lyrics and the liner notes, because I'm a big believer in that. I mean, I wanted it the first time around, but that's again like something that people don't realize. Like that costs money, like per page of the layout that you choose in your packaging, like that's costing you. And at the time, I put the money into the music before anything, and there was nothing left over. So, we had, I mean, there's a couple pages in there, but I insisted the second time around that we put the lyrics in there. So it's not just, just a 4-panel
Well,
thing or something like
I
that.
just got this one CD in the mail. I hadn't really got to listen to it. It's an English band called Big Big Train,
Oh yeah.
and
Big Big
their
Train.
last album they put out was like in this book thing where they have the lyrics like in each of the pages, and I'm like going, yeah. I mean, in this day and age, for them to you go into that much effort, put it out there. I mean, granted, it's like it's a specific kind of a music sound, so it's not a mainstream band doing this, but it's like
Right.
for them to do that. I mean, it's amazing, and I do understand on the flip side some of the independent bands that they can't put out CDs, so that's why they put out digital. And a lot of them don't like the idea of putting out digital, but it's the only way that they can make their money back a little
Or a lot
quicker
of them
than
are making the mistake because they don't think there's a market for the CD buying public. I'm seeing that left and right, where
oh
artists
yeah,
just assume that because it doesn't fit their buying patterns that, there's no relevance to themselves having that available. I mean, you can't, what was the quote I saw recently? Like, you can't choose where your fans listen. Your fans are your fans. And that's a really important lesson that we, fortunately I've learned, but you can't choose your like, your fans are your fans. God bless them.
exactly.
You love them, you appreciate them for giving you the
Oh
time of
yeah,
day. Where they're, where and how they're consuming what you do is up to them. The least we can do is, make it available
provide
in
it.
every which
You
way.
provide it.
To an
Yeah.
extent, we looked into, for the book 2 album, we looked into, I've gotten requests and people saying like, hey man, I would love a vinyl of this. Is Rausch going to do a book 2 vinyl thing? And we really looked into it, and at the end of the day it was just so cost prohibitive because the length of this record was, just because it was over 60 minutes, we would have had to do a double vinyl. And at that point it's just getting silly in terms of you're just taking a bath in money. And
Right,
um,
right.
it's tough for business decisions to interfere with your art. But so that's why I say the music, not to sound cliche, but the music's got to come first. It's kind of true. Like it has to. It has to.
Yeah.
Because Rich Mauser said, without that, you have nothing. I'll never forget him saying that. Like you got to worry about the 9 million other things, about your career that have nothing to do with the making of the music. But then Rich, thank God, that's a wonderful thing to keep in mind. He's like, yeah, but just remember, without the music itself, you do have nothing. so
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you got to, you got to prioritize.
Exactly. I really think um, when I hear one of my favorite bands coming out with a new album, especially I like going, I can't wait to get this CD. That's my thing. It's like I can't wait to part of getting it for me is you get it in the mail and you open up that package and you're like going and you literally it's like you transformed into that little child on Christmas morning, or on your birthday. It's like getting that opening up that package and getting that, you're getting that CD, and then you get to go to whatever, however you listen to the album, you know.
But that's such a foreign alien experience to so many people,
I
like
know
I
nowadays,
know
yeah,
what you're talking about. I get it, but so many people, it's like it dates you just to say that kind of a thing. And that's
right.
heartbreaking, to be able to be like, we used to appreciate music, and now it's just consumed. I mean, right now it's TikTok. It's being used as a background music to serve
Yeah,
stupid. Now I sound like an old curmudgeon, TikTok can
right.
be funny. With all due love to TikTok, but the challenge is the influencer. I mean, if people don't understand what a lot of TikTok, what the market is nowadays, is it's influencer campaigns. An influencer campaign is, again, like we were talking about earlier, it's all about money. So when someone seems to go viral or blow up, it's basically almost never the case. There's a lot of money behind the scenes and making it appear that way. But all it is money exchanging hands. The label's paying somebody out there because they already have a built-in audience of, 10 million people to like act as though something goes viral, and then that triggers a million other people to do it, and then you have manufactured virality. So everything's so manufactured and controlled, and like I said, not that it hasn't always been that way, but my whole beef is that it's with less emphasis on the music. Like even if you say, Doug, okay, yeah, but it was always about money. It was always a business. It was always something that needed to factor that in. Like you were talking about deadlines, it was always a thing, but it's just like the music itself seems like they call it music. Now I sound old again, but as far as the substance of like what's actually going into it, it's just so watered down in so many cases. And like we opened by saying, there's a lot of good stuff out there. This is like my kind of thesis statement, like as we're probably going to be wrapping it up here, but my thesis statement is like, there's a lot of good stuff out there, but you have to be willing to put in the effort to go find it. Exactly. And you have to have a patience, no pun intended, to let the music kind of take its time in developing its relationship with you, because a relationship is what music is. You have a very personal thing. Yeah. So it's not going to be a 15-second TikTok video. I guess that's my point. I don't see how you can just fall in love with this music that's going to end up saving your life via a 15-second hook or something like that. It's short-term, quick fix stuff. But back to all your points, to try to really, get something meaningful. In other words, I think about this, like eventually we run the risk of having no artists to influence future artists. At some point, it's going to be like, what is it that future music people are going to be able to be influenced by?
Exactly.
I mean, at some point, all right, Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, we all go back to, as the classical part of me, like in one way, okay, but that's like the Beatles, like you can only go back to the Beatles so much in a certain way until like, the Beatles can always be cool. I mean, 200 years from now, fine. Beatles can be this great thing, but you need other things meaningful to be able to be influenced by as time goes on. And is that going to be stuff that you had to really look and search and put effort in to find underground? Is that the stuff that's going to be able to rise up to have the chance to be that level of influenceable? So to be continued.
Well, you're coming out with some covered songs, over the course of this year, right?
Indeed. Indeed.
So it's like, I'm going to put links down below so people can find it. Doug's also on Facebook, and what other platforms are you on?
Everything is Rausch official. It's real easy. So Rausch, RAUSCH official. So all the appropriate handles are Rausch official. If you are interested, I didn't mean to be doing a commercial. This is terrible.
Oh, go ahead.
You asked. If you are interested in the physical product that I paid so much money to get the physical lyrics into the booklet just for you, the devoted follower. Bandcamp, it's rausch.bandcamp.com, and then the physical stuff is also on Amazon. So Bandcamp's of course always the best because everything goes directly to the artist, but Amazon, we're all on Amazon, so no shame there. That's where the physical stuff is, and then all the social media stuff, it's just Rausch official, and I'm pretty much everywhere. I kind of never bothered with Snapchat. That's the one thing I kind of just let pass me by, but I'm pretty much everywhere.
I think that's geared to the teenagers and maybe early 20s.
So is everything when it gets started. That's what, and then very quickly time moves, but it's too much. It's too much. I like back to the main point. I got to make music. So So that's what I'm working on doing, and hopefully Rausch 3, whatever its official title may be.
Right.
No spoilers. Like I said earlier, the demos are pretty much all there. And then once the COVID situation green lights us, we can get going. And the next step is really drums, to lay down the foundation to do all the other stuff, to get doing some drum sessions. That's right now what I'm hankering. I'm chomping at the bit to be able to get some drum sessions going so we can, that's going to be really what lets the process floodgates open and get going and finish. I mean, I've been, the songs are all there. It's just time to, it's just a matter of getting it done at this point. So stay tuned, kids, and thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for taking the time, because like I said, I want to promote your music because I think it's very important that people hear it. Because like I said, quality of music. You have the quality of music that, on both of your CDs, and then your little piano covers are gonna have that same quality. It's, granted, just you and the piano, but it's you still get to hear Rausch.
There you go. There you go.
So, well, again, like I said, thank you for taking your time out of your day to do this. I really
I'm
appreciate
glad we finally, we had one false start, so I'm glad we were able to finally make it happen. And the fact that we did it on the release weekend of this single is kind of, it all kind of worked out in a strange way. So, all right, sir.
All right. Well, thanks again, and I hope to talk to you soon.
And thanks for listening. You've been with me. You've been with me from pretty much the start, and there's only X amount of people that I can say that about. So I just wanted to close by saying that I appreciate your time and your listening.
You're welcome. Welcome.
And keep listening.
Stay tuned. All right.
All right.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Don't let it die. Always got to say that.
All right.
Peace.